I have it as 7 o'clock, and I will call this meeting to order. So roll call for attendance. Bill Spalding.
Here.
Kevin York.
Here.
And Theo Null.
Here.
And myself as well. So 4 members of the planning board are here, so we have a quorum and can proceed. Moving on to the second item on the agenda, the approval of the meeting minutes from June 10th, 2025. Have any of the members of the planning board have any comments they wish to talk about at this time?
No.
In that case, do I hear a motion to approve the meeting minutes from June 10th, 2025 as presented?
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Bill, seconded by Theo. Roll call vote. Kevin?
Yes.
Theo?
Yes.
Bill?
Yes.
And myself, yes, as well. So passes 4-0. So that brings us on to item number 3, related to the proposed wetland bylaw as brought forth by the Conservation Commission. Before we proceed, I do want to acknowledge the board is in receipt, which was distributed, as I understand, earlier in the day to the planning board from the DPW, where they were respectfully asking that prior to any guidance or votes being taken on by the planning board, to note that the DPW has not had the chance to review this bylaw, and that they are respectfully requesting the ability to provide said vote or review rather prior to anything formally being occurred. My understanding is Eleanor Axelrod from the Conservation Commission responded, and I will yield the floor to her if appropriate, so you can kind of explain the purpose of the reason why the Concom wanted to come before the planning board tonight.
Yes, so we're hoping to pass a bylaw, and in speaking with our town council, he recommended going to various boards in town and staff departments to solicit input before we actually take a article to the town meeting. Since this is a general bylaw, it doesn't require the planning board to approve it, to refer it to town council and town meeting. So it's a separate process, and the commission has the authority to take it on their own to introduce it. What he did explain is at town meeting, I think there's an expectation that planning board would, step up and, speak for favorable action or not. But I have to confirm whether that's absolutely required, since theoretically you don't vote on this. So that being said, I did let him know that this is very preliminary. We basically have to weigh the spectrum of protection versus overregulation. And so this is kind of the first stop. You guys are another land use board, and you've seen a lot of these issues. So we are hoping your experience and will kind of guide us a little bit as we revisit things and fine tune our plan. So I'll turn it over to Jennifer to present. And I think it's probably easiest to hold the questions till the end. And then hopefully we can, ask questions of you like I posed before, and kind of make this a dialogue.
So thank you for that explanation. So just for full clarity, we are not anticipating any votes today, and this is in the early stages, and this is more, I'll say, consultative in nature and more of a dialogue than a formalized review.
Correct.
So with that being said, Jennifer, if I understand that you have a presentation prepared.
I do, yeah. And can I share my screen?
I believe you can.
Presentation? Okay. Okay, are you all able to see the first slide?
Yes.
Okay, thanks so much. Okay, so my name's Jennifer Fanning. I'm a member of the Wakefield Conservation Commission. Thank you for the opportunity to present tonight on this proposed wetland bylaw that the commission has been developing over the past few months. I know that the commission's interested in feedback on this bylaw from the planning board and will also be seeking input from the public, DPW, and other stakeholders as we work on finalizing this bylaw proposal. A copy of our current draft of the bylaw is on the commission's webpage under forms and policies. I'll give a short presentation on the bylaw and look forward to hearing your questions and input at the end. I know that several commission members are present tonight and are interested in the planning board's feedback. Eleanor and I will take questions from the planning board at the end. We're going to steer clear of deliberations tonight, but we do plan to take your feedback back to the next commission meeting for further discussion among the commission. So why does Wakefield need a wetlands bylaw? Wetlands are a key feature of Wakefield's natural landscape. In fact, Wakefield's most iconic feature in town, Lake Quannapowitt, is a wetland. Wetlands, both individually and as a system, provide a variety of services to the community, including protecting property by mitigating flooding, filtering pollutants from groundwater and drinking water, and providing necessary habitat for wildlife. And wetlands provide these services to our town completely free. Our goal in putting forward this bylaw is to increase protections for wetlands resources that are currently not well protected under the state's Wetlands Protection Act, specifically in the following areas. We want to increase protection for isolated wetlands, for vernal pools, and for land immediately adjacent to wetlands in an area called the buffer zone. Increasing protections of these resources will increase protection of property in Wakefield against flooding, improve climate resilience, and better protect groundwater from pollution and protect natural wildlife habitat. So what does the proposed wetland bylaw do? Our bylaw proposal as written extends protections to new resource areas, namely to isolated wetlands and to vernal pools. The Wetlands Protection Act provides very limited protection of these resources. Under the WPA, vernal pools are only protected when they're present within the jurisdictional area of another type of wetland, which excludes many vernal pools from protections. We also aim to codify a 25-foot no disturb zone, which would limit work that occurs within 25 feet of a protected wetland. This would include wetlands that are currently jurisdictional to the Wetlands Protection Act, as well as to certain isolated wetlands and to vernal pools. Lastly, in addition to the interests identified in the Wetlands Protection Act, the proposed bylaw identifies additional public interests in regulating wetlands, including improving water quality, recreation, sedimentation and erosion control, and protecting rare species habitat in Wakefield. This diagram predicts different types of wetlands that are regulated and not regulated under the state's Wetlands Protection Act. Currently protected resource areas include wetlands that border on other wetlands, land under wetlands, areas within 200 feet of rivers and streams, bank, and lands subject to flooding. The WPA also regulates activities within 100 feet of bordering vegetated wetlands, an area called the buffer zone. However, the protections within the buffer zone are very limited, and the Act does not currently provide for a no disturb zone around wetlands. Here, the red arrows show these areas currently regulated under the WPA, noting that for some of these areas, such as the buffer zone, the protections are currently very limited. In green are the areas where we seek to increase protections through passing a local bylaw. With a local bylaw, our aim is to extend protections to isolated wetlands, vernal pools, and to ensure protection of the first 25 feet of buffer zone. So why protect wetlands and their buffer zones? Passing a wetlands protection bylaw would further a number of key objectives. Wetlands and their buffer zones help to protect property by mitigating the effects of flooding. Wetlands and buffer zones not only provide storage for floodwaters caused by heavy rain, they also absorb excess floodwaters into the ground. By protecting wetlands, we also enhance Wakefield's climate resilience. Wetlands and buffer zones improve water quality and prevent algal blooms by filtering pollutants, as well as other debris and contaminants from water. and wetlands and buffer zones both provide core habitat for wildlife species, including amphibians, birds, reptiles, and mammals. In Massachusetts, most animal species that depend on either wetlands or buffer zones depend on both combined over the course of their lifespan. Accordingly, we want to increase protections of the buffer zone over what is currently provided under the Wetlands Protection Act, which is minimal. Vernal pools serve a very specific and important role in wildlife habitat. Because vernal pools are dry for a significant portion of the year, they do not support fish populations. This provides a naturally protected habitat in which amphibians can breed and grow without predation by fish. Amphibians serve an important ecological function as both predators of insects and as prey for other wildlife. And many amphibian species depend on vernal pools for their life cycle, so we want to increase protections of these special wetlands. Lastly, residents of Wakefield care very strongly about natural resources and consider them a key feature of Wakefield's character. There was very strong consensus in response to the Vision 2030 resident survey in Wakefield that residents want to protect and enhance its natural features, with 91% of respondents endorsing that goal. Accordingly, the Wakefield Vision Statement 2030 statement begins, "We envision a Wakefield that protects and enhances its beautiful natural landscape." In spite of this strong public support for protecting its natural resources, Wakefield is one of the relatively few communities in this part of the state that has not adopted a wetlands protection bylaw. Statewide, 63% of communities have adopted a wetlands bylaw, while in eastern Massachusetts, the rate is 83%. All of the communities surrounding Wakefield have passed a wetlands protection bylaw, and many of these communities have adopted their bylaw through the town meeting process, as we hope to do. Our bylaw proposal adopts much of the language proposed by the Massachusetts Association of Conservation Commissions model bylaw, which was most recently updated in 2006. This model has been widely used across the state over the past couple of decades as a basis for local wetlands bylaws. We also reviewed norms for what other communities around the state and regionally are using for their bylaws to ensure that we're not too far afield from what other communities are adopting. The protections that we propose in our bylaw draft are consistent with what other municipalities are using across the state, including protecting isolated wetlands and vernal pools, identifying a buffer zone for these resources of 100 feet, and protecting a 25-foot no disturb around protected wetlands. Compared with nearby communities and communities with similar wetlands resources to Wakefield, our bylaw draft is very consistent in terms of the resources that are protected and in proposing a 25-foot no disturb zone. We're seeking input from the planning board tonight on our current bylaw draft, and we also plan to begin public outreach to solicit feedback on the bylaw proposal. Once we have a final proposal, the commission will submit a warrant article to town meeting, and I know that we'll hope to gain the support of the planning board for the proposal that we submit. Thank you again for the opportunity to present to you tonight, and we're interested in hearing what questions and feedback you have.
Thank you for that presentation, Jennifer. I'll open it up to other members of the planning board if anyone has any questions they would like to pose to the Conservation Commission. Mr. Spalding.
Hi, thank you very much for the presentation, Jennifer, and I appreciate the work that the Conservation Commission continues to provide. I think in conjunction with our board, it's super helpful to have this bylaw, and I feel that it's something that, as you know, we run up against a lot where what about this 25 foot no disturb zone, and what is limited activity? So I think the definitions within the bylaw will help the most. I think as it goes down, and I'm like let me see, I'm scrolling through it now. I don't know if that helps, or if you want to pull it up, if that helps, whatever you think will work. But I think section 3 definitions is the most important for me, as we make sure we're speaking the same language. So we want to make sure that when we're reviewing and discussing with homeowners or whoever is looking to seek approval of property improvement, whatever it might be, that we are speaking the same language. And there's so much crossover. So under definitions, I would think that the term bank has come up a lot for us. So I really like that it's specifically in there. We had one really long meeting years ago that we discussed what bank was like and how that would do. So I was wondering, like, with the definition, is this the full list, or is there another resource of definitions that the Conservation Commission looks at frequently that should be in this section?
So for this section definitions, we've included definitions where the terms differ from the definition that's in the Wetlands Protection Act, and where
Okay.
the definition is not listed, we adopt the language of the Wetlands Protection Act.
Mhm.
One possibility is that we could, just for, convenience, although I think we wouldn't want to create confusion, is we could include more definitions, just so they're in one place, and also understanding that some projects may fall under the bylaw, but not also under the Wetlands Protection Act.
Understood. And I know this is a lot of work to pull something like this together. And just the term vernal pool, for example, it's like, I think that's the longest definition in there, if I remember correctly. It's, it is, I mean, it's important us for, I think, for me as a board member, that if I know there's a project, for example, 50 Quantapowhat Parkway that came in front of us and now it's going in front of the ZBA. And I imagine your board has had a chance to look at that too. It was really confusing to understand the difference of what that wetlands would be considered and how far that buffer versus the 100-foot buffer versus the 25-foot no disturb zone, and how we can use that and make sure that when we're speaking to applicants that we're not contradicting anything that your board, the Conservation Commission, would I don't know, just in contradiction to, I guess.
Mhm.
I guess it's more of a comment than a question, but I could really use the Section 3 definition more than any other part of the bylaw to help me understand. Yeah, that's all.
And do you receive project proposals that talk about vernal pools? You do?
Well, sometimes they don't talk about them, but
Mhm.
they're there. And for example, walking the site, personally, I like to go, any projects that we have, I like to go and visit to see what's going on before, if I get a chance before the meeting. But it's hard in the wintertime to understand if it is a vernal pool or not. And you don't really know until springtime or early summer if it really is a vernal pool. And I know it's something that we rely on your board on to help back us up if we don't know.
Right, right. Yeah, so one thing that we want to communicate to the, public as we're presenting this bylaw proposal is the process, and people can certainly reach out to Ethan Fleming, the conservation agent, Elaine Vreeland, for help with, determining whether the kind of, wetland features on their property may be a vernal pool or some other type of wetland as well.
Mhm.
Mhm.
I do have one more question, and it's something that we we struggle with all the time, is enforcement. So is there anything in your bylaw that speaks to, I know I looked for it, but was there anything that I might have missed that has to do with enforcement of this bylaw?
That was a conversation early in the bylaw drafting. Some communities adopt bylaws that have enforcement measures.
Mm-hmm.
We don't have any in this in this draft. That was an initial decision by the Conservation Commission. But, it's something that we're happy to, hear feedback on.
Okay, and well, I think it's let me just jump down to it. I think it was in towards the end, revocation of permit.
Mhm.
For good cause, the commission may revoke or modify a permit or determine the issue. So I know in our board, a lot of times we'll go out to a project site after the subdivision or A&R has been when they start to do construction. And we notice different things. Most recently on Nahant Street, where they weren't using adequate drainage methods during construction, and their line of work wasn't well defined, and they weren't catching the debris coming into the road. So I think that's part of something that in this bylaw, it seems like it should have something in there about I don't know, maybe it's expanding on revocation of permit, and there's more information under there about I don't know. I don't know where this is going. Again, this is, I guess, the conversation we should be having, right? It's what is the step? If we're looking at a bylaw, what is the process that if someone does see something that doesn't seem right, like a violation, that they could go to this bylaw and look at L, revocation of permit. Here's how a permit is revoked under these certain terms, or notify this person in the town to at least review. So we don't have out there butters, but we don't have like eyes and ears to notify us if trees are being taken down that shouldn't be taken down and all. So I was wondering if there was anything in here that could be expanded on in a section that could help explain that.
Mhm. Okay. Yeah, I think that's something that, we can consider as the commission in terms of how I think as much as possible, we want, this to be relatively seamless and simple and, mirror and overlap with the Wetlands Protection Act, whether it's using the actual forms and procedures, or a similar process for ours. But I think that's a good question, and something that we want to think about more. And I think Eleanor wants to weigh in on this as well.
Okay, that's what I had, the definitions and then enforcement.
Mhm.
Thank you again.
Bill, on the enforcement front, just to clarify, were you thinking like fines? Were you thinking fines, or who do you contact if you think something's wrong?
Well, for example, with Nahant, we contacted the town engineer to have someone go out and back up what we noticed. And we would send pictures and a little write-up of what that would be. But that didn't come out of an abutter or anybody. It just happens that we were going by the site as the planning board to really make sure things weren't happening outside of what was approved. So in the same case here, in a scenario back to 50 Quantipower Parkway, if they are disturbing or building too close and their foundations are going in places, is it the building inspector that knows this well enough, that has the enforcement power? I think that's probably maybe the only person, but it seems like there has to be some type of path to notification or path to for someone to be able to say, oh, this is what I should do if I notice something isn't quite right. Who do I contact?
I think it's typically the building, depending on what you see, it's the building inspector, the town engineer, or the conservation agent. And in some cases, we've received an enforcement order that came through the town, basically the building engineer, kicking off that process, and an element of it came to us because the construction was happening close to within the 100 feet of a wetland.
But I think to Bill's point, Eleanor, I don't think we can solve it here. I
No.
think as a useful case, consider if there was a project that you had gone through the whole process with, and during the construction, a member of the Conservation Commission noticed that a contractor was within the 25-foot no disturb zone. What is your recourse, and just being thoughtful around how to protect your interests and the town's interests in order to enforce or provide some mechanism that compliance could be re-achieved if a non-compliance event were to occur.
Yeah, ultimately, the agent contacts the applicant and says, please correct this. And then I think our final piece is, if things aren't done according to plan, we don't issue the certificate of compliance. So that's kind of the final sort of check on the whole project. But these are good points. These are definitely pain points in projects.
So Theo, I think at one point you had raised your hand. Did you have
Yeah.
other questions, concerns?
Yeah, just to respond to this point, I guess there's a lot I need to learn about how the Concom does enforce its requirements. We add a whole bunch of conditions and they get recorded with the plan, and I would assume your conditions get recorded with the restrictive covenant, right? Do you ever levy additional costs to the surety bond or anything like that that goes with the project? Is that a tool? And Right, and then is there, I guess legally, like when you have to sue someone to stop work, um, is there any damages that they ultimately would pay? Is that part of the WPA?
I'm not, Jennifer,
Yeah.
I can't see your screen.
Well, so, I mean, that was, sort of initially my line of thinking when Bill asked about enforcement is, some bylaws do include fines, in their bylaw. That's something that we discussed and decided not to include in this bylaw, proposal. I suppose if it came to that, and I think what you're talking about is, work that proceeds even though it's come to the attention of the Conservation Commission. It's been addressed by the conservation agent, the fact that it's inconsistent with the orders of condition and the work continues. I think then we would, consider as a commission what next steps, we would want to take in consultation with, the town's attorney in terms of what's advisable.
I wonder, and this is totally a stretch perhaps, but you can't add anything to the surety bond that would be like a little kitty for legal, legal action or something to redress against potential Concom having to take legal action. That's
I
yeah,
thought the
Jim's,
surety bond was to ensure a defined scope of work
yeah,
and
okay.
has coverage for payment. So telling an applicant to have a pot of money for you to sue them with, I don't know if that would pass muster.
All right. Fair. Um,
Anything else, Theo, that you wanted to
yeah.
comment?
Overall, I agree with Bill. Really well written, really clear and helpful. The two slides that really I found really compelling and I want to learn more about is that we're the holdout, right? I also thought it was really helpful to know all the ways in which this bylaw is equivalent to our neighbors. And I'm wondering, I think future presentations could, I think, identify any anything that they have that we opted against, or yeah, like you can't ask for a more compelling slide than this. The what's the most important thing that's currently missing from the Wetlands Protection Act that this is doing? Is it really isolated wetlands and vernal pools?
My answer to that would be the vernal pool protection and
Yeah,
the buffer
yeah.
zone
Okay,
protection.
all right.
And I think, one of the conversations that's, ongoing and we'll, I think also hear feedback on, is, protection of isolated wetlands, which there are different types of isolated wetlands, and vernal pools are one of them. And I think that's where the most agreement is, in terms of what isolated wetlands to protect. That's, the vernal pools. Um, and the buffer zone, I think those are both, really important. I think there's a lot of agreement around that.
Yeah.
There are towns that have, stricter, more protective bylaws. Some towns include a, um, a 50-foot no build zone. These are
Wow.
all things that,
Okay.
that we've considered. And yeah, I think that what we've selected for our initial draft of the bylaw is, um, sort of quite, yeah, I mean, very consistent. We're not doing anything, or proposing anything that's really less common.
Okay. No, that that's a a really helpful comparison. As my only other and I'm gonna, yeah, you've given me a lot to learn on. Um, uh, Sometimes I was wondering, is the public hearing and notice provisions, is the having to have a hearing within 21 days of receipt uh, um, helpful? I, and there's like only required like a public notice within 5 days of the scheduled uh, commission hearing. Um, uh, I think on the one side, it's advantageous to y'all. It helps you move a little bit quicker. Like we have to have 2 weeks of public notice, weekly uh, successive notices in the item and on our website. Um, uh, I'm is one better than the other? I don't. I'm wondering. Yeah, what? Uh, yeah, what's better or worse, or if that helps you. And would additional time, would additional notice provision be helpful to notify abutters and others who would be interested in any public notice?
Are you talking about notifying abutters, of public hearings about the bylaw? Are you talking about notifying of NOIs?
Of NOIs.
Of NOIs, okay.
Yeah, because you talk about having a hearing within 21 days of receipt, and then having 21 days to at the closing of the public hearing to make a decision. I wondered if that's uh, really advantageous or hamstrings you a little bit.
Eleanor?
Well, the time frame is set, right, by the DEP, by the act, so we have to, no matter when we get those, that's the clock starts running. If we're not busy, it's advantageous. If you have multiple hearings going on at the same time, it's not advantageous. And that's where commissions can get really backlogged. That would be my take.
Thank you.
Theo, any other comments or questions?
I'm
Okay.
good. Thank you.
Before I take over, Kevin, did you have anything that you wanted to comment on?
Thanks, to both of you, Jennifer and Eleanor, and the whole conservation committee for the time and the effort put into this. It's obvious a lot of thinking went into it. I like on the presentation that you had slides 16 and 17. I think those will be really helpful when it comes to sharing this with the public to show how much time you put into looking at surrounding communities in Eastern Massachusetts. I think that will really matter to a lot of people to see that we're trying to align rather than do something that really goes beyond what the others are doing and really catch us up in a sense, since we haven't had this, but so many surrounding communities have. So I think that is a really good component to emphasize in there.
Thanks so much.
Any other members of the planning board have anything?
Jim, sorry, are you going to, do you have any questions or anything? Because I was wondering, like, if we're just ending this now, I'd love to hear like what the next steps are and what you might need from us. I don't know if that's where you were going, so I don't want to take that from you.
No, I have a couple, for, reserve the right of the, as a chair to go last. But so I think in general, this looks very well thoughtful and, well thought through, like other members have indicated. I did have a couple procedural things that I don't really want to get into the weeds of it, but I would just encourage you to think about. When I read this, I don't know if I look at section 5, the applications and hearings for permits and requests of determination. I don't, it, the actual requirements of what documentation you need to submit is not clear to me. What plans, what reports, those types of documents, with the caveat that it could be that you're not planning on putting this bylaw and you're having it as part of your rules and regulations, which is what we do for some of our elements. But if you are, I would encourage you to point any applicants in that direction or define it in the bylaw. Just because I think that it would be helpful in terms of you probably get some better quality applications with more complete information. Additionally, I think there are references to the permit, specifically in section 6. I would encourage you to be a little clearer as it relates to however you want to define, wetland permit or other equivalent. Those are really some of the main ones that I had. In terms of the specifics, I have a boatload of questions around vernal pools and what are they and what are the harms, but I think that you guys have addressed why that's important. Just from a identification perspective, there's a lot of information here on vernal pools, and I don't know if I 100% understand how that would be identified if a applicant just submitted a plan. So I don't know if other jurisdictions have had any language associated with that, but that's something I would think about, just because if I'm an applicant, they may not, if it's a section of woods, they may not even know through no fault of their own or malintent, for lack of a better term. Some of these other things, right? I think a riverbank is pretty easy to spot, but a vernal pool that could be theoretically dry most of the summer and then come back in the winter, I could see that being a little bit more of a challenge.
Okay, yeah, I think that's a good point, that is a real challenge, is to, make sure that we're as best we are able to educating the public about what is a vernal pool, how to recognize one, and also thinking about where, the different ways that we might, capture these among the public and make sure that the public are aware of them as they're submitting projects and proposals for permits.
Yep. And then the other thing is more finicky based on where another bylaw proposals is. I would strongly encourage you to take all your definitions and review what the bylaw review committee is currently doing, and potentially put all your definitions in with the definitions of if the bylaw review committee's effort is successful, the entirety of the zoning. Oh, actually, wait, I take it back. This is not a zoning bylaw, right? So I withdraw that comment to have that get put in the same location as the rest of it. But I would look at their format. I think it's actually pretty good. I don't, not that yours is not, but I think it's a little clearer what the term is trying to be defined.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Any other members of the planning board have anything else that they want to go forward before I start asking about next steps? For reference, I am not planning on opening this to public comment, as this, you guys are soliciting feedback from the planning board only, and there's going to be plenty of other Concom specific meetings to take public feedback on. Seeing nothing else on the planning board, so I guess next steps, what do you anticipate? I see Eleanor raised her hands.
Yeah, I was actually, I think we were hoping to hear from you guys, when you're permitting, kind of what are some of the things that you are requesting applicants to do? You know, we had a project come before us that already had a 25-foot setback, which they presented to you. So for example, is that something you require as part of your subdivision planning? Do you have any other things? You know, we're not as well acquainted with the zoning bylaws. So if there are kind of other best practices that you're using that we can leverage, you know, a certain ratio of vegetation, that type of thing, that might have some overlap with what we are doing.
So I would say one of the two things that are very Concom focused that I see most specifically is we have a lot of projects that I would say don't do a good job of defining the limit of work in the disturbance zone. So we are very cognizant of trying to make sure all of those are defined, and basically where there's rotated wetland edge, that gets defined and flagged in an appropriate manner. That's not always 100% consistent. And the other one that comes up every time is you got to go tag all your trees. There seems to be a reluctance to do so on pretty much every project. And we say it's not just us. When you get to Concom, if there is a Concom impact, that's going to be a comment related to the 25-foot setback. That's one that we observe a lot of people trying to do anyway, because they know the Concom review is going to be challenging. But that's not necessarily something that I think that we're dictating per se, if that makes sense. But we do oftentimes talk about it and flag it as, hey, this looks like it's going to have to go to Concom. That could be something that you might want to think about, and then flag that as something. But Bill probably has more experience with plans, so you can probably comment on other things that are typical for our review process.
Thanks, Jim. And I really appreciate the question, Eleanor, because it does a couple things that come up that we want to push. Maybe top on the list is snow storage. We're very concerned about snow storage areas, and that they do get pushed sometime in that. This is why I was like hooked on that limited activity inside the 25-foot no disturb zone, because I feel like a lot of property owners think they can just put their snow in those places. And we've had to really discuss like why and where the snow is, and it's not usually located on the plans. It's not usually thought of. So that's something that we do push. Jim mentioned the limit of work line. We're careful about how we approach that, because it's not necessarily about the 25-foot no disturb zone. Sometimes it's about the 100-foot buffer, but we want the Concom to take care of that part. We really want to focus on, yes, these trees need to be saved, and we don't want any work in these zones. So we try to set it at that drip line of the trees to make sure they're not affected. And that doesn't always happen well. But those are the two. So the limit of work that Jim mentioned, the snow removal, and then we get into drainage, and we get into the calculations, and we rely on the engineering department to help us sift through the reports. They're not always easy to read. We do get into issues with retaining walls and different walls and what those mean. So when you do have, the different terms in there and of what a bank is. So we've had some plans show that they're creating banks, And it's not like, well, we made this bank here to have this buffer so we can have it. It's like, no, the bank of that might go down to a stream or a brook or a river and how we're treating that. So with different drainage issues, we really try to highlight them and force or question the developer on what the real intent is. Once we find out what the intent is, then we really prepare our questions to move forward towards the Conservation Commission. I think the hardest part is, and it's hard to attend a lot of meetings. I know we're all volunteers, but it's like, wow, if I could watch the video of the Conservation Commission right to this part and understand what they were talking about, I can then come back to our next meeting in the planning board and say, wait a minute, maybe that's what you're telling us. And I'm not going to name any certain people, but that's not what I understood from the Conservation Commission's discussion about this certain area. So those three things happen a lot. One is snow storage, where that's happening. Two is that limit of work line and how we're using it properly to save different vegetation and trees. And the third would be, I think it's hard for us as a planning board to understand and relate to the conversations that the Conservation Commission is having to make sure that we're not contradicting or getting caught in a scenario where it's like, well, the planning board said we could do this. Why is your board stopping us from doing it? And vice versa. Like the Conservation Commission said that was okay to do, and we're just like, okay, kind of hold our breath.
Can I ask you about the tree protections?
Yes.
Are those, in those instances where you're trying to protect trees, is that because you've, again, because they were in a wetland area or identified, 25-foot no disturb, or was it more because of a existing landscape preservation requirement
It's
that planning board has? Like,
well, sorry, it's probably closer to the last comment,
Okay.
last suggestion, because we really want to protect our abutters, and we understand that trees and sight lines and shade. And if a property owner or developer is going in and taking a lot of mature trees down, it really changes a lot of the abutters' quality of life. So I think that's the first thing as a planning board that I look for. The next thing would be in that, how many trees are you taking down that you don't have to take down? So it's like we all know the importance of trees in our environment. And are you just taking down these mature trees? And we think of mature trees more than 6 or 8 inches, depending on the species. And we want them, as Jim mentioned, to be marked. So if they do mark those around, we can go out and we've done site walks where we do bargain in a certain way with like, well, if these trees are coming down, how is that going to affect the abutters? And or how is it going to affect the runoff of storm water? So it's more in that flavor than it is in any others that you mentioned. I don't know if any other planning board members want to chime in on that.
You got it right. And I would just echo finding all the ways to support each other's boards and be consistent is really important. And we kind of, I mean, everybody wants to be last in some ways, but in truth, like you've got to come with a fully baked project to Concom and Planning Board and ZBA, and don't expect to be doing a lot of sort of renegotiation, because then you are able to play boards against each other. I think wherever we can, we definitely want to not just be consistent, but really insist on being as fully baked as possible so that we avoid all of that.
Can I respond? I'll just say that's very helpful to hear because our jurisdiction, stops within the 100 feet of a wetland. So the tree issue is a difficult one for us. So it is good to hear, that you guys are looking at that. And that's an opportunity where maybe down the road there could be more alignment.
And
I find
Ellen,
it. I also
Sure.
find it helpful to listen to your meetings. So,
and
about
to
a
add to
project.
that the meaning of that limit of work line feels like the only tool that we have to help define that.
Well, this has been
Thank you.
very useful, so thank you so much, and absolutely let us know if there's anything else that we can do to help support you guys as you guys are going through the balance of the process. Aaron, I see you raise your hand.
Yeah, I just had if you don't mind, I was just reviewing the bylaw myself, and I just had a question about the performance standards and regulations. I'm sorry, performance standards and the design. So it says it will, I think it's section 4B, you allude to performance standards and design in regulations. Are you guys creating regulations as part of this? Or do you guys already have regulations that you follow?
We initially had the material that's in this current bylaw draft split across, bylaw and regulations, and ultimately we kind of merged the two and put everything that we felt was really critical in a bylaw. So, we've had some discussion about, you know, drafting regulations before the town meeting. I think my impression about that is that it's not required, but it may possibly be a good idea. So I think we'll talk about that. But I think we have included the things that we consider to be really critical, in the bylaw. I mean, additional things that might go into regulations are more definitions. Again, we will check out what the bylaw review committee, what their format is, and perhaps additional performance standards like commonly recommended standards. Either that might not otherwise apply because it's falls under just the bylaw and not the WPA, or it falls under, or it's a common sort of special or additional condition, not a standard one. Those are
Okay.
things that we might consider including in regulations.
Okay, yeah, the only reason I was like looking at other communities too, just trying to get up to speed with this whole thing, and I noticed like in Reading, they spell it all out. So I was just wondering how it looks like you guys were going to handle it through regulations. So that was my question. And then the second thing I'll just reinforce, we were just having an internal meeting today. I would highly recommend that you guys sit down, you guys being the commission, sit down with DPW. I know you alluded to that at the beginning, but having commission members talk to them just so you can get feedback from them, I think is crucial. I'm sure myself, Ethan, would be more than happy to sit in on that as well, but kind of speaking to them, I think setting up a meeting, and more than happy to help coordinate that as well. And that's all I have.
Thank you. And I would definitely echo what Aaron's saying related to the DPW. I make sure you guys have as well, but they're very highly qualified and very helpful and have read good comments. And Aaron likes to keep us honest when we don't have a town planner to do so as well. So with that, unless anyone says anything else, I'd like to close item number 3 and potentially move on, unless anyone else has anything else they'd like to discuss. So I see a member of the public has raised your hand. So I noted earlier, we're not going to be taking comments from the public related to the wetland bylaw on the basis that this is not a bylaw that is the planning board is managing the process, and there's going to be plenty of other opportunities for the public to provide comment as part of the Conservation Commission process. Okay. So in that case, I will close item number 3 and move on to item number 4, the signage overlay district. So members of the planning board probably or should have received a copy of the overlay district, as I understand it. is the current proposal from the zoning board of appeals based on their, I'll say, historical management of this topic. So, Kevin, I'd like to kick it over to you to kind of give a rundown of your understanding of where this is, based on the series of texts that you and I flipped over related to the design review board comment.
Yeah, I actually don't have visibility into it, so I got an out of office message from Tom Lucy that he was going to be out of the office until today. So I'm not sure of that design review board component, but my understanding was the same as yours, that I think across town broadly, people wanted to not have that be part of this because there just hasn't been anyone appointed to that board for some time.
So with that being said, so we'll plan on trying to get further guidance from the ZBA as it relates to if this is the current bylaw that we have or if there's a different version. For folks who either haven't read it or members of the public, what Kevin is referring to is the zoning review, but the zoning proposed signage overlay district that we have received from the zoning board of appeals includes language related to a design review board that our understanding is consistent with what is currently in the overlay district, but has not sat for some time, and that the interest was to finding a different process without a design review board in order to ensure that the bylaw could be effectively enforced and or managed. So that's what we're looking to get confirmation on. So I don't know if any of the other members of the planning board have had a chance to review the overlay as collected by Kevin, or if there's anything that we wanted to talk about. I had a couple kind of high level comments before getting into the nitty gritty of this.
Yeah, I would just say I took this to mean this was reinvigorating the design review board, and then I thought that was good, but then I thought maybe we needed some more specificity about the terms and the length of the term and things like that, and um, stuff like that. So that was a little more nitpicky. So yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Does it, would it make sense for one or maybe multiple members of the planning board to request to get on the agenda for the ZBA to kind of just have a more formal kind of state of the state of this bylaw? Just because I feel like that we've been kind of in this holding pattern of trying to figure out where they stand in terms of their review for this process has been for some time.
We could try that, maybe
Yeah.
depending on what the response that I get from Tom and Joe. And if it doesn't seem to have clarity or there's still confusion, then maybe we do that.
Mhm.
Okay. Yeah, there's a laundry list of definitions, which I've read about half of them because there's so many of them and they don't seem that pertinent to some of the other specific elements. But then I found some locations where there seems like there's definitions that are missing. So looks like there's a lot in here. And then I think the other thing is, I don't know if other folks have looked at all the different regulations in here, but I'm not sure all of this. There seems like there's a lot of regulation in here, and I'm not sure what we're trying to solve for. So I think as other members of the planning board look at this, maybe just think about what we do or do not want to allow as part of this whole process. I'm not sure if this is when this was actually developed and if everyone is still in alignment. That's the vision that we want to promulgate as on behalf of the town.
Yeah, I was expecting something much shorter than 26 pages because initially they said they wanted to streamline it.
Yeah. So I don't know if other members of the board disagree, but I think maybe we push this till we get some feedback from the ZBA if this is even the right document we really should be looking at, and then if not, then maybe Kevin and myself will request to get on the agenda for the ZBA and just ask them for an update where they stand. Does that feel like an appropriate next step?
Definitely.
Okay. Yeah, because this is another one where if this was the actual bylaw, then similar, right? Where like there's a million definitions that we probably want to make sure and cross-reference with the bylaw review committee to make sure that they're all not redundant, and then probably make sure that we bake them into the definitions for the overall bylaw. So, okay, well, in that case, we'll put that one to the side for now and then move on to item number 5, the town-owned land at Foster Lane. So, Theo, I know you expressed some interest in bringing this up for members of the public who may not be aware. There was a request recently for some town-owned land over on Foster's Lane, and I understand that I will pull up where it is located, for the documentation that's been provided to us to date. So kind of in between Foster's Lane and I-95, this is the parcel that a member of the public has expressed interest in acquiring from the town. So there was a request to the planning board if we had any interest in the lot. And I think Theo, you'd raised your hand and said you wanted to add this to the agenda.
Yeah, just because just to make it public. I mean, something like this is like the letter from Administrator Mayo said they would have to go out to bid with the parcel and invite bidders. And also just formally that it would be offered as a non-buildable site. So that that's not a vernal pool in the picture for sure. So I thought just really helpful as a public acknowledgement that this request has been made, and that there would be a formal process. And then this is more of a question. There's no this doesn't once a bid is accepted, they don't go to town meeting to approve it, right? They would just sell it at that point. That's
I'm not aware. I would think that transaction of land would require town vote. Am I incorrect? Aaron, would you happen to know that?
I don't know on the top of my head. Sorry.
yeah.
I would imagine it would, but
Yeah.
I don't want to. Bill has his hand raised.
Yep.
So it's been in the past where to purchase land, it's come up in front of town meeting.
Yeah.
For example, Butler Lane, that whole,
Mhm.
yeah. So it's been like the purchasing of that's come up, but I can't recall, and maybe it has happened that the relinquishing or selling of land. Or another question about this: are we having a discussion about this tonight, or should we not?
Oh, wait, are we? I thought that this one. No, we are having a discussion with the next item. We're setting a public hearing.
Oh, for the street
For the
change.
street.
Yeah, that's fine. I just wanted to, I mean, is it okay if I bring up a couple of comments for this one?
Yeah, that's
have
the whole
to-
purpose.
Okay, all right. I just wanted to make sure. And Theo, are you all set with what you were?
Oh yeah. No, I'm
Okay,
glad
so-
we're having the discussion.
I did go out to check this out because I was concerned. It's abutting a cemetery, and that's what's happening right in front of, if you go back to the the picture, right? So right below Foster's Lane, where you see those little shaded lines, yeah, that's a cemetery. So like this land is real interesting, and I did a little bit of research to look at the land and what it is. So 47 Foster's Lane is 53,000 square feet and change, so like 1.2 acres. Adding the additional 53,579 square feet or 1.23 acres, that would provide or have that homeowner at 47 Foster's to have 2 lots abutting each other. That would be 106 6,722 square feet, 2.44 acres. So my thought in this whole thing, if a homeowner is going through to do this, I imagine there's a subdivision coming along that, like, why else would somebody purchase at probably close to $300,000 this property that really half of it seems to be underwater. So I have, I don't know, something's like kind of triggering some what's going on here type of questions. I know that's not for our board to discuss at this point, but I just wanted to bring it up as a topic as we think about this. I don't even know what we're supposed to do with the comments that we have. Are we going back to, I mean, the former town administrator, Steve Mayo, was the person with this. I mean, Erin, is this something that would go through you now that then would go to town
Yeah.
council, Tom Mullen?
Yeah, so you could send me any comments that you have, and I could send to Sherry and then our acting town administrator, Kevin Gill.
Okay.
I'm just getting up to speed on this, so I'm not sure the exact, I don't have the meeting material right in front of me right now when you guys receive this, but yeah, you could send it to me and I could coordinate with those appropriate people.
Okay, and I don't know if I have any like comments. I just have concerns at this point. And I think those concerns would happen later on. I don't think this property really has any value except what the homeowner at 47 mentioned as to increase their buffer. And I imagine that's allowing them to build. Which I'm not against. I guess I'm more curious and concerned than anything.
Right. So, and putting a restrictive covenant on this property, I mean, it would be to formally make it permanently non-buildable. That would still permit them to build elsewhere on their site, right?
Right, so they can still use that acreage square footage to include in their, yeah.
Yeah.
Which I get, it's wonderful if it can go through and it happens, so, yeah.
Okay.
Any other members of the board have any other comments, concerns, questions related to this, or is there, I don't know if I'm hearing, I think it sounds like there is no action that we would like to take as a board.
So actually, if I do have one more comment, Mr. Chair.
Okay.
I guess the concern I have isn't for something being built or anything. I'm a little concerned that the homeowner at 47 Foster's could be led in a direction to purchase this, but even knowing it's non-buildable, it might backfire on them. So I'm a little concerned for that homeowner. I guess that's where my concern is. That they might be going through this whole process, but they might find out that they're still not allowed to do what they're hoping to do. And I don't know if it's something that our board can help with or the Conservation Commission can help with. I guess that's where I stand with my comments and concerns.
Yeah.
Does anyone know if the surrounding parcels of land are owned by the town? Just looking at Google Maps, it looks like there's a lot of land there beyond what's in the red box.
I actually have up the wakefieldproperties.com. And it does have, there's Foster's Lane, the town owns 4 parcels, the 4 parcels there.
Okay.
Yeah,
You want
so
to pull that up?
I can, it might not help with exactly where they are because the map's not showing, but I can definitely
Okay.
share this. So you can see here that right, I know it's kind of small. Let me see if I can, there we go. So you can see 47's down here in the list, but Town of Wakefield DPW for Foster's Lane, Foster's Lane, Foster's Lane, Foster's Lane. I'm thinking those are those lots that go on the right above the cemetery and across. I can't figure out on the map. Let me stop share and reshare. Let me see. I'll just do my. Thought I had. I think that's sharing maybe my full window now. But I have a. Thought I had. Okay, here we go. Can you see the Google map?
Yeah.
Okay. So where the top of the cemetery is, I believe those back to 128, they run like southeast to northeast in that angle, cutting across into that corner. And I believe those are the, let me see, those are these properties here. You can see Park Department Cemetery, and then the two here. This one, I think this one right here. Oops, sorry. Ah. This happened to me a couple times. Like as soon as you go back, it disappears. But so that's my thought is I'm concerned that the owner at 47 is taking the steps to purchase this, but might not be able to do what they're hoping to do. And I don't want them to go through that. So I don't know. I know that's up between them and their attorney.
Okay. Anything else that we want to discuss on this one before I close item number 5? Okay, so I'll close item number 5 and move on to item number 6. Edgewater Place Drive application for street name change. So at this time, we need to set a public hearing. And I apologize. I don't know if I double checked this. So right now we are currently not scheduled to meet on the 22nd. But does
Which honestly, because there needs to be postings for this in the paper and all that, so that wouldn't work anyways. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Because I was gonna say I would like to schedule this for the 12th of August, unless any members of the planning board, Bill?
It might need more time than that. When we put together the street name change bylaw, we took a lot of time to consider what needs to happen. And the biggest concern was that if this is different, but if a street changed, the name changed, that the residents living on that street would have to change their identity because of all their address and credit cards and whatever. So we put a lot of information and time into a lot of effort and time into the information that's part of the bylaw. And one part of it that could affect the amount of time is prior to the public hearing, the fire chief, police chief, town engineer needs to give a written report and recommendation to the planning board with the name change, whether to recommend it or not. So I don't know if that creates a bigger buffer of time.
Written report or just approval?
No, where do you see a written report?
175-11, section C.
Prior to the public meeting? Okay,
Can you pull that up by chance? I'm just trying to
Sure,
find.
that's fine. Only because I had a big part of this. I just want to make sure that we're following it. So I'm under street names and numbers, street name changes. There's a couple of things in here that are already happening, right? But this is really just business. I don't think anybody lives on that Edgewater, like lives there. So let's see. Let me zoom in a little bit more. and highlight prior to the public hearing.
So I think I look at this like any other subdivision where we need, when we send it to the various departments that are listed within the subdivision to provide comment and feedback. It would be about a month at this point, correct?
Mhm.
Where
And
they
I'm
could
trying to
get,
remember, I thought we had to have a public hearing within a certain number of days,
60.
60 days.
of the application being received.
Mhm.
And so
Um,
we received that on the 2nd, I believe.
And the town clerk is tasked with making sure all abutters, owners and residents and businesses are on that list.
which they have. They
Right.
received we have all the addresses.
Mhm.
A public hearing draft notice has been put together based on the application. All that needs, then we'd work with just like any other public hearing notice, work with
Yep.
the newspaper to post it. And then notify the abutters with the notification or the public hearing notification.
And we have the ability to continue after this. So I mean, after 60 days. So 60 days is August 31st.
Mhm.
So if we had the public hearing on August 26th, could we still have a follow-up public hearing at the next meeting if we needed to? Or do we have to give a decision on the 26th?
Well, we're not giving a decision. We are
Well, we
forwarding
have to,
recommendation to town council.
Recommending, right?
yeah, and we have to give the recommendation within 30 days after we open the public hearing. So if we open on the 26th, then we would have to give a recommendation by our meeting on 9/23 to town council. And then Aaron, do you know, has that this street name change gone to all of those relevant parties?
So
Fire-
police, fire, and have seen it, and of course DPW because they're the ones that have put in it and the engineering.
Yeah.
So they all are aware of the situation at the current time. Yep.
Okay.
Cool. I just wanted to make sure there was enough time.
So I think what I'm hearing is potentially if we set it for the August 12th, we would have to make a recommendation by September 9th. Does that feel like that would be sufficient time? And then I don't know, would be Aaron, because DPW is the one who's submitted it, they're the ones who'd come and actually talk about the rationale, etc.
Correct.
Okay.
Yes. So they would be at the public hearing discussing why.
Okay. And then just for reference with other members of the board, currently our August 12th meeting is a continuance of 154, 158 Salem Street and a bylaw review committee update. It's currently what's on the docket, and then our 26th meeting currently has nothing on it. So I'm somewhat amenable to whatever, but I think maybe my preference would be to set the public hearing for the 26th since we don't have anything else on the agenda at that time.
That sounds fine.
Aaron, I have a quick question because it is the DPW.
Yeah.
We don't have anything in here about a town entity filing for a change
So-
and the $800 fee.
Yeah, so that's been discussed with Tom Mullen.
Okay.
And so there has been ongoing discussions about how it just says, what's the exact wording again? Boards.
Right.
But it doesn't have, yeah, a public body of the town. And so
Right.
not in departments. Yeah.
I know, and an oversight on our part. I almost wish that we had, like, if proposed street name change is by a town entity, that the fee is waived and the process shall be revised or bypassed if it's something that, like, with review by the police chief, fire chief. I know this is interesting. It actually
Yeah.
never came up in our conversation in all the meetings we had for this.
It might be something that is worth revisiting too, as and
Yeah.
other things as we go through this process, and learn how it goes.
Yeah, this is the first time I think it's happened since, yeah.
Correct. Yeah, it is the first time.
Mhm.
So DPW still has to pay the cost for notifying the abutters, which is
Yeah. Yeah. And if you look at the list, a lot of it is all the same abutters because
right,
their
right.
properties right next to each other. So
Yeah.
for this purpose, it's not a huge list, but doesn't mean for future. So yeah, there might be some things that we learned from this that we may want to revisit this too.
So in that case, I think are other members of the board amenable to having the 12th, or sorry, the 26th be when we set this public hearing for of August?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so in that case, so we'll set that for that date. Oh.
The one thing I just noticed that, and I don't know if there'll be a continuation, but I think it's just the opening, if the way I'm reading it, it's just close to the date. If you guys actually received it June 30th, and 60 days from that is August 29th. So I just wanted to make you aware of that. I think, but the way I'm reading it is it's just within those 60 days.
Yeah, to open
okay.
it, and then we have 30 after.
30
it
after.
is open.
Okay, I just wanted to make you aware.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, so that's fine.
And we need to recommend by 9 or by 30 days after.
30 days after, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, after the opening of the public hearing. So that would be
The 26th of September, which we have a 9/23 date.
okay. I'm just writing these dates down. Okay.
Okay, so anything else on item number 6, Edgewater Place Drive?
We don't need a vote to set that date, do we?
I don't believe we need a vote to set a public hearing, right?
No. Okay.
Okay, so then moving on to the next item. Items not anticipated by the chair. So I'll use my prerogative right now to point it to Theo, who I believe has some good news for a certain plan.
Woohoo! Yes. So the congratulations to all the members of the housing production plan, and really members of town, particularly our departed senior planner. The town council voted unanimously to approve the housing production plan. And it was one, what they really liked were the goals and the recommendations and the next steps to come out of it. And I think we feel the same. And one of the parting comments really was, what happens now? And the comment from Councilor Costas, about particularly the successor to the advisory board, and wondering if the advisory board would continue in some shape or form to help guide any public education or implementation kind of process. We're sort of, continuing research in order to be able to act on some of these recommendations. And so that's certainly worth considering. And I don't really know what would be involved to do that. I mean, I don't think it's in that advisory board's charter to stay in existence after the housing production plan is accepted by the Commonwealth. But right now it's active until in the event that we had some substantive change from recommended by Executive Office of Livable Communities. So and the plans, my understanding, has been filed with them. So now we're waiting. So I don't know
Do you
what.
happen to know how long it typically takes for the?
I was actually just reading that today and I closed it. I think they may have 30 or 60 days for review and then provide comments back. It's one of those two. I'm working actually with them right now with EOHLC, getting them the document. And so hopefully next time I'll have a better idea of when we'll get those comments back.
Okay.
And
Okay.
they need a letter from you guys too, with the vote that you guys had. I'm waiting. That's what I'm waiting to hear back from the meeting when you guys voted on it, as well as the town council. So Jim, I'll coordinate that through you.
They need a letter from us indicating that we voted for it.
You approved it. Yeah, the planning board approved it.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah, let me know. I'm more than happy to do whatever we need to do for that.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then so dovetailing off of that, this is where in terms of the what's next, I want to just make sure all the members of the board. I don't think I really want to start talking about this now, but again, post fall town meeting, we should start thinking about what that that bylaw process is that we've talked about, where we potentially are looking at some of these things on a holistic basis of what are some of the changes to the substance of the maps that we want to think about. So I know I've been putting some thought into what that wants to look like. So I think as we get closer to getting past the fall town meeting, we should start thinking about how do we want to build a process that drives community engagement. And to your point, Thea, the advisory committee model might be a quality one to think about.
Yeah, excellent. Yeah, and I think it would be really neat to I think that there's a lot more to learn in creativity, and I think sort of another opportunity for a lot more public engagement on different fronts that would be helpful.
Any other items not anticipated by the chair? Bill.
Yes, 4 Oakland Road. Attaches an application for one special permit for proposed a detached accessory dwelling unit. I don't know if anybody else had a chance to look at this, but I know this is going to the ZBA for the special permit, and I am totally confident in what they will be what their decision will be. The applicant is requesting relief from limitations set forth in the Wakefield zoning bylaw related to a detached accessory dwelling unit, including those regarding setbacks. So obviously it's referencing 190-22 of the Wakefield zoning bylaw. A couple things. One is if you go to the Wakefield zoning page, the E-code, it's not updated that I could find with the recently passed ADU bylaw. So, I mean, that's a process, and I'm wondering how that happens. I know we've been up against that before, but I think we're in this weird state where somebody could look at the old one, be misled, and the ZBA is looking at the new one. In this case, with Attorney McGreal, I don't believe they're looking. He had a wonderful part in this process. So I just want to bring that up. The second part is, for the life of me, as an architect with 30 years experience, I can't understand these drawings. I can't understand where the accessory dwelling unit is. There's a garage, there's a 1.5-story wood structure that exists, and then it proceeds to show a plan with a 24 by 25 by 24, whatever footprint of the house with a renovation. I don't know what they're doing, whether they're building that accessory dwelling unit into the renovation of a dormer, and they're trying to divide the house that way. But I hate to say it, but these drawings are crap. I don't even, it's like, it's impossible to figure out where it is. If I was a ZBA, I would just be like, no, come back with better plans that explain this. I don't know if anybody else had the same reaction, but it's just like, are you kidding me? I don't know.
No, thank you. I couldn't understand it either. And yeah, I was a little flummoxed.
Yeah.
So
And I know this architect usually does decent work. I'm just so confused.
yeah,
I almost want to reach out and say like, you're really going to present this and without being able to understand or have any type of description of what the project is besides an ADU. If I was a ZBA, I would just totally reject it and have them go through the process again. I don't know, should we write something or just let them? I mean, it doesn't fall into our jurisdiction because I can't understand property improvements, adequacy of methods of disposal, sewage and other sight lines. I mean, no, it doesn't fall under us. It's just, I don't know.
yeah. If it's just an improvement or a change to the existing structure, which is what it
Yeah.
presumably is.
I don't know, Erin, am I missing something?
Well, no, I looked at it too when they actually brought it up to building. To your first thing you were mentioning. So
Yeah.
it was passed the town meeting, we all know that. Then it has to go to the Attorney General
Yeah.
for them to review. So we haven't gotten that packet yet. Confirming everything looks great on that end for the local bylaw. That was more Sam's wheelhouse, and I'm getting back up to speed with that. But yes, our bylaws do not reflect that yet because we have not gotten the
Yeah,
confirmation.
we're in that weird, like,
in between place. Yeah.
Yep.
But as of February 2nd, if it was located within an area of single family zoning, they're allowed by right. So, but that's why we have that local bylaw and with, the other restrictions. So, that's the first one. And the second one, yeah, I looked at it real quickly and I had a hard time following it myself.
Okay. So I guess I just wanted to bring that up, and I don't think we should do anything as a board. Unless somebody else wants to do something, I don't mind writing something up, but I feel like if the drawings were in better shape and there was really clear of what was going on and we could make some comments, do we write a letter to the ZBA saying we're really confused about this set of drawings? We can't act upon it because there's no clear ADU in there?
I could see either way. I mean, I think that it'd either be a no action or planning board provides no comment because we can't understand where the ADU occurs. But at the same time, that's not anything related to, to your point, all the components that are under our purview for this theoretical review.
Well, I mean, Jim, to your point, it's like, but if we don't say anything, it's like, wow, when planning board didn't have any comments on it, I guess they have no problem with it. I don't want that to be something that the attorney will say in front of the ZBA.
Yeah.
I could hear it.
Yeah. I mean, if other members of the board are in a material agreement, I have no problem deputizing Bill to write a letter on our behalf that I could execute and send to the ZBA.
That would be lovely. I think yeah, wouldn't want us to be misconstrued. So I think it's entirely legit to just say we're confused. We can't do our due diligence.
So I think this is real simple, like no action due to incomplete and or
Confusing.
confusing architectural plans.
Kevin, I saw that you look like you're about to say something.
I was just saying I'm okay with the letter.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
So with the board's permission and the chair's acknowledgement, I will draft and share it with the chair. And if at that point we need to by the 16th, I think.
Yeah, it's the 16th.
Okay. That's all I have. Thanks.
So speaking of items that were in our packets this week, did anyone else have any comments, concerns, questions they wanted to bring up related to 50 Quantapowhat Parkway for the self-storage facility that is before us from the board? That's another one that's got a July 16th due date for us if we choose to comment. Yeah, I will take that silence as a no.
Actually,
Oh.
I have to recuse myself. I want to make it as record because a very good friend of mine owns the property adjacent. So, and he's been reaching out to me, wondering what's going on with it. And I referred him to the ZBA's website and the information for the plan. So I actually didn't know that until like a month ago. Yeah. People that you're friends with and you bike with and you're like, oh, you own this whole property, great. So it just came up, and yeah, I just want to make sure that as things go forward that I am not part of that decision making.
Understood. Thank you for the disclosure. Any other members of the board have anything they want to comment related to the 50 Quantapowhat? No? Okay. In that case, I'll move on. And then any other members of any other items not anticipated by the chair? Okay, in that case, I had two that I just wanted to ask Aaron on, specifically related to, so, do we have an update related to the two ongoing searches for town administrator and town planner?
So I'll start with town planner. We are currently in second rounds of interviews for that position. We will be doing that this week. So hopefully there'll be news coming out soon about that. Town administrator, the process is still going on. I know they had a meeting July 2nd, I believe, so last week, looking at applicants with the selection committee. I think they meet again later on in July, but this is all just off of memory. So that process is still moving forward, but I don't have any official dates. So those are the two things. So maybe by next meeting for the planning board, we'll have a planner, hopefully. And so that's kind of the process is moving forward.
Okay. Well, that'd be great. I mean, obviously, we love having your help, but it's also nice when there's someone who that's their job and then another job on top of it. So, okay. In that case, anyone else have anything else before I move to item number 7, adjournment? In that case, do I hear a motion to adjourn?
So moved. I'd like to make a motion to adjourn.
Okay, do I hear a second?
Second,
Roll call vote. Bill,
Yes.
Kevin,
yes.
Theo,
Yes.
and myself, yes as well. Thank you, everyone, and look forward to seeing you on the 12th.
Yeah.
As a reminder, I don't believe we have a meeting scheduled for the 22nd.
Yeah. Thank you.
Wonderful.